I was standing in my kitchen at 3 a.m. when the handle of my front door turned. The problem is, I was home alone. I watched the doorknob rotate slowly, purposefully, until it hit the internal lock with a metallic clack. Then it stopped. There was no knocking, no voice asking to be let in, just the sound of someone's heavy, wet breathing on the other side of the wood. My heart wasn't just racing. It felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my ribs. I knew with a sudden, cold certainty that whoever was standing out there hadn't come to talk. I've lived in this apartment for about 6 months. It's a 4th-floor walk-up in a building that's probably 80 years old. The floors creak, the pipes moan, and the hallways always smell faintly of floor wax and old cooking oil. It's the kind of place where you don't really know your neighbors. We nod at each other in the mailroom, but that's about it. It's quiet, which is exactly why I moved here. I work as a freelance data analyst, which means I spend most of my life on my laptop, often late into the night. Being alone at 3 a.m. is normal for me. I actually prefer it. The world feels smaller, more manageable when everyone else is asleep. I usually have a podcast playing or some lo-fi music in the background to drown out the silence. But that night, my internet had flickered out around midnight, leaving the apartment uncomfortably still. I was just about to head to bed when I heard that first movement at the door. It didn't start with the door handle, though. It started about a week prior. I'm a creature of habit. Every night around 11 p.m., I take my trash down to the basement bin. It's a routine that helps me transition from work mode to relax mode. The basement is a concrete bunker of a room, dimly lit by a single flickering fluorescent bulb. The first time I felt it, I was tossing a bag into the dumpster. I heard a soft scuff coming from the shadows behind the furnace. It sounded like a shoe dragging against grit. I froze, waiting for a neighbor to emerge, but no one did. I shrugged it off as a rat or the building settling. But the next night, the sound was closer. And the night after that, I found something that made my skin crawl. Lying right on top of the trash bag I had thrown away the previous night was a small, hand-carved wooden bird. It was crude, almost ugly, but it hadn't been there when I left. Someone had gone into the trash, found my bag, and placed this gift on it. I didn't touch it. I just went back upstairs and locked my door. I told myself it was probably the building's superintendent, an eccentric guy named Miller, just being weird. But Miller had been on vacation for 2 weeks. 3 days ago, the gifts moved to my floor. I walked out to get a delivery, and there, sitting perfectly centered on my welcome mat, was a single, used Band-Aid. It was folded in half. It felt deliberate. It wasn't trash that had fallen out of someone's pocket. It was placed. I felt a surge of genuine disgust, but more than that, I felt watched. I started checking the peephole more often. Every time I heard a footstep in the hallway, I'd press my eye against the glass. Most of the time, it was just the guy from 4B coming home from his shift at the hospital. But once, around 2 a.m., I saw a shadow. The hallway lights are on a motion sensor. They had been triggered, but when I looked through the hole, no one was there. The hallway was empty. Yet, the light stayed on, meaning someone, or something, was standing just out of the line of sight, tucked into the recessed doorway of the stairwell. I watched for 10 minutes. The light timed out and went black. I waited. 5 seconds later, the light clicked back on. Someone had moved just enough to trigger the sensor, then retreated back into the dark. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with a kitchen knife, watching the glow of the hallway light through the crack under my door. Every time it went out and then flickered back on, a cold wave of adrenaline hit me. I called the non-emergency police line, but what was I going to say? Someone is standing in the hallway and making the lights turn on? They'd tell me to go to sleep. That brings us back to tonight, the night of the door handle. After the handle stopped turning, I stood there in the dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want them to know exactly where I was standing. I moved toward the door on my tiptoes, my breath hitching in my throat. I reached out and slowly, agonizingly, covered the peephole with my thumb before leaning in to look. I moved my thumb. At first, I saw nothing but the yellow tint of the hallway. Then a face moved into view. It wasn't a monster. It was a man. He looked to be in his 50s, wearing a heavy, stained corduroy jacket. But his eyes, they were wide, fixed, and completely devoid of any blink reflex. He wasn't looking at the door. He was leaning his ear against it, listening for me. He was so close that I could see the pores on his skin. He looked like he was vibrating, a tiny, frantic tremor in his jaw. Then, he did something that made my stomach turn. He reached out his tongue and licked the wood of my door. A long, slow stroke from the middle of the door up toward the peephole. I jumped back, a small gasp escaping my lips. Immediately, the scratching started. Not a knock, a scratch, like a dog trying to get through a fence. Scritch, scritch, scritch. "I know you're in there, David," he whispered. "My name isn't David." "David, I found the bird. Why didn't you keep the bird? I carved it from the tree where we met." His voice was thin and raspy, like he hadn't used it in years. I realized then that he wasn't a burglar. He was someone who had completely lost his grip on reality, and for some reason he had fixated on my apartment, or the person he thought lived here. "You're not David," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Go away. I'm calling the police." The scratching stopped instantly. Silence returned to the hallway, heavier than before. "David is hiding inside you," the voice said, now right against the wood. "I can hear him rattling around in your chest. I just need to let him out." Then came the weight. He didn't kick the door. He threw his entire body weight against it. Thud! The frame groaned. Thud! My deadbolt held, but the wood around the strike plate began to splinter. I ran to my bedroom and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped it twice. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? "There's a man trying to break into my apartment," I hissed, trying to keep my voice down while the thud of his body against the door echoed through the flat. I gave them my address, my unit number, everything. "Stay on the line, sir. Officers are being dispatched. Is your door locked?" "Yes, but he's breaking it. He thinks I'm someone else. He's not right." Suddenly, the banging stopped. "He stopped," I told the operator. "I don't hear him anymore." "Stay where you are, sir. Do not approach the door." I stood in my bedroom doorway, looking down the short hall to the front entrance. It was dark, but I could see the silhouette of the door. It looked intact, but crooked. I waited for the sound of him walking away, for the sound of the stairs. Instead, I heard a metallic tink from the kitchen. My heart stopped. The kitchen has a small window that leads to the fire escape. I had locked it. I knew I had locked it, but these old buildings have those simple crescent latches. If you shake the window enough from the outside, they can sometimes jiggle loose. I looked toward the kitchen. The window was sliding up. The sound of the city, the distant hum of traffic and a siren, poured into the room. And then, a hand reached over the sill. A hand wearing a stained corduroy sleeve. I didn't think. I just ran. I didn't run toward the kitchen. I ran toward the front door. I figured my only chance was to get into the hallway and scream for help. I ripped the deadbolt back, flung the door open, and sprinted into the hall. The hallway light didn't turn on. I was running in pitch blackness. I knew the layout, so I headed for the stairs, but I tripped over something soft and heavy lying in the middle of the floor. I went down hard, skinning my palms. I scrambled to my feet and looked back. The hallway sensor finally triggered. Lying in the hallway wasn't the man. It was a pile of clothes. My clothes. He had somehow gotten into the basement storage units, found my bin, and dragged all my laundry up to my floor. But that wasn't the scary part. The man was standing at the end of the hallway, by the stairs. He wasn't in my kitchen. The hand, I saw at the window. It had been a decoy. A glove stuffed with something, rigged to a string. He had lured me out of my fortress and into the open. He stood there, silhouetted by the light, holding a long, rusted piece of rebar. "There you are, David," he said. He started to walk toward me. Not a run. A slow, predatory limp. I turned and ran the other way, toward the end of the hall, where there was a dead end with a large window overlooking the alley. I was trapped. I looked at the window, then at him. He was halfway down the hall now. "The bird was for the heart," he mumbled, swinging the rebar gently. "The Band-Aid was for the skin, but the iron is for the soul." I looked at the window. It was a long drop, too long. I looked for anything, a fire extinguisher, a heavy plant. There was nothing. Just as he raised the iron bar, the stairwell door at the other end of the hall burst open. 2 police officers came through, guns drawn, flashlights cutting through the dimness. "Drop the weapon," Get on the ground. Now. The man didn't even flinch. He didn't look at them. He kept his eyes locked on mine. He smiled. It wasn't a mean smile. It was a satisfied one. "See you soon, David," he whispered. Then, he didn't drop the bar. He lunged at me. Pop, pop. The officers fired. The man collapsed a few feet away from me, the iron bar clattering across the linoleum. I spent the next 6 hours at the police station. They told me the man's name was Elias Vane. He was a former tenant of the building from 30 years ago. He had been released from a psychiatric facility 2 months prior and had apparently stopped taking his medication. The David he was looking for? That was the name of the man who lived in my apartment back in the 90s. David had been Elias's brother. Elias blamed him for locking him away, even though David had been dead for over a decade. Elias had been living in the crawl spaces of the building for weeks, moving through the vents and the basement, watching me, convinced I was his brother returned from the grave. They found a nest in the basement, hidden behind some old boilers. It was filled with photos of me, photos taken from the street, photos taken through my windows, and even a few Polaroids that looked like they were taken from inside my apartment while I was sleeping. I moved out the next day. I didn't even pack everything. I just took what I could fit in my car and left. I live in a high-rise now. It has 24-hour security, keycard access for every floor, and no fire escapes. It's expensive and it feels like a cage, but I feel safe. Or at least I did. Until yesterday. I went to my new mailbox in the lobby. I unlocked it, reached inside, and pulled out my mail. At the very back of the metal box, tucked behind a phone bill, was a small object. It was a hand-carved wooden bird. Elias Vane is still in the hospital under police guard. He couldn't have put it there. But as I stood in my high-tech, secure lobby, I looked up at the security camera in the corner. The red light wasn't on. And then I felt it, that familiar, cold sensation of someone's eyes on the back of my neck. I haven't looked behind me yet. I'm still standing here, holding the bird, because I realized something I didn't tell the police. In the Polaroids they found in the basement, the ones of me sleeping in my bed, there was always a shadow in the corner of the room. A shadow that didn't look like Elias Vane. Elias wasn't the only one watching me. He was just the only one who got caught.